Welcome to 3 The Tennis Show. I'm Gill Gross with Joel Drucker and Amy Lundy. So much to talk about as the season is underway with Nadal at 0-2, Djokovic at 2-0. And I think Rafa is where we'll start, and then we'll go to Novak, who will play Denis Shapovalov in the quarterfinal of Adelaide in 12 or so hours from now at a really awful time slot for us here in the United States. Djokovic second, first Nadal, who I think is at the moment maybe the most hotly debated topic in the tennis world, because we have that kind of panic meter thing going on. Nadal in his last several matches has not had a good win rate at all. But to me, it's really ignore what happened at the end of last year and take a look at these two matches this year. What are your takeaways, Amy, from the two matches that you've seen so far this year? A loss to Cameron Norrie and a loss to Alex de Minaur.
Happy New Year, everybody, first of all.
Happy New Year.
Secondly, tip of the cap to you, Gill, because you were all over this issue back when you were doing your courtside reporting for the U.S. Open, that there was something wrong with Nadal's serve. And I think you said you saw him practicing. And now it's even more pronounced, not necessarily the problem itself, but the stats are starting to bear out. And also, there was a great graphic on the World feed that showed Nadal's contact point on the serve from the toss in the two matches that he's had so far this year versus last year's Australian Open. And the toss points, the contact points are different. And Jim Courier happened to be calling that match for the World feed and, speculated that the service motion, because of the ab strain that he perhaps is not fully healed from, is either by design he's tossing it that way, or because he's hampered, he can't make contact where he normally likes to, is having an impact on his serve. So you've got that graphic, which shows a stark difference. But then let's look at the stats themselves. In his two matches, Nadal is not to his usual stellar career numbers in first serves in, first serve points won, and crucially, second serve points won. So clearly, Houston, we have a problem here.
And look, and so there are two games in tennis. There's a serve game and the return game. And it's interesting, the two players we're going to talk about, it's both a key part of what they're up to. So here, Nadal, that injury, and whether it's conscious or adaptation or all the things that people do, even the very best in the world, how injuries affect them and how they compromise things. And again, always remember, Nadal, never a natural lefty in the first place. Now he's having to serve his lefty serve with an injury. And that's not helping the point get started. And then that triggers other parts of the game. Whereas we'll talk later about Novak and his return. But yeah, it's unfortunate. I think we've been doing a lot of ignoring some of Rafa's results lately, because it's like, you're talking about the panic meter. It's like, oh, not worry. Now just a little bit more of a shadow, huh? Bit.
Well, I'm certainly, there's certainly no ignoring these two results, because it's been a while now. The ab injury at this point was at Wimbledon. You have to get past it at a certain point. And if you don't, it's more so an error, most likely in your recovery process, more likely to be an error in your recovery process than it is just, kind of the natural process of coming back from an injury, which is always difficult at the start. At this point, it has been a long time. And I do find it kind of surprising that the toss hit points are still different. And Amy, to be clear, it was lower, correct? Lower and more out to the left?
It was closer to his body.
So
they were commenting that, and they showed ad and deuce, and interesting, it was even different ad and deuce what the problem seemed to be, but generally speaking, the toss was closer to his body. So what Courier and his partner were saying is that no way could he hit the kick serve. Like, that would be just, you can't hit it from a ball that's that close to your body. You got to toss a little bit farther behind. But he's not a kick serve guy anyway. He's a slice guy with his lefty slice. Even so, one of the best coaches that I've ever met once told me that a millimeter or a centimeter difference up here is a foot where it lands. So if you're making minute changes to your toss location, that's going to have a big impact on hitting your targets.
Your coach is really wise about that stuff. And I don't think it's an error, Gil. I think it's just a delay. He hasn't made a mistake. It's just the body might not be cooperating in his thing. And maybe it means we'll take layer off. I mean, it's like we're kind of on a certain kind of a little alert. It's like when they look at the world, they see how close it's a little closer to that midnight of an injury. I'm not saying the end of his career. I'm just saying about the concern factor and this stuff with the serve. Yeah, okay. So the motion becomes cramped. You can't be as expansive with the toss. You can't get the body into it. So there's all this kind of impingement on the delivery.
At this point in time, Joel, going back to, you're right. Unless you're in the training room, unless you are one of the high-level professionals that is working with Rafa to get through kinds of these things, it's hard to know. But at this point in time, if Nadal still doesn't feel like he can really get up to the serve to reach out and extend his midsection like you need to do on a serve, it naturally strains the abdominal area, then at that point in time, I am questioning whether or not Nadal should have come back in Cincinnati, should have come back at the US Open, should have played this indoor hardcourt season. I think that is what is going to be into question if we are still seeing evidence that the serve is not normal. Is that fair?
Agreed. Right. So I agree with that. That's right. So the question, so Rafa's thinking, where's the injury at? And maybe did it get worse during the US Open, or maybe, or what's the recovery, or all those kind of things. And these injuries are very, very mysterious. It should be so simple as conclusive as, let's say, in 2016, Federer, his knee out the whole half of the year, forget it. But here, Rafa, he made these efforts to come back, and again, and we'll still see. I mean, and we'll still wait to see. But it's a little concern.
Another thing, and by the way, Amy, you wrote this on Tennis Connected, and it was a really good piece.
Thanks.
The first serve in stat, because it's very digestible, I do want to kind of give that out. He was 61% against De Minaur. He was 58% against Cam Norrie. And the career number is going to take me just a second. Amy, do you remember
68, I think.
68.
Which is right. That is perfect, because sometimes if you go too high on your first serve percentage, that means you're not giving it enough or whatever. I mean, occasionally you're just freaking on, and Novak was, which we'll talk about in a minute. But 68 is a perfectly wonderful gold standard for that.
Agreed.
But maybe for a guy like Nadal, who's not a ace kind of guy, he gets some, but it's more about teeing up the rally.
That's right.
And not being hurt by the return. And so that's a huge, I mean, granted, we're talking 2 matches, but that's a huge gap. And then the confidence part, I think Nadal, for all his confidence and skill, his need to feel who he is, that he's being Rafa, it's like the whole way he's with preparation and health. He's not a guy who wants to feel that he's winging it ever.
One more thing on the serve. He needs that shot to get better, not worse. I mean, we have seen to counter the decline of movement and fitness. And I believe Nadal, has in a lot of ways already done this in his career, but it just needs to continue. I think Novak has done this with Roger. There just wasn't that much room for improvement on the serve. But that shot needs to become a bigger part of his game if he's going to have success. And I think that's a good thing to focus on heading into the Australian Open, is just that the serve needs to be good, because I don't think he can win without that shot being good anymore, as was the case for a lot of his career.
Yeah, I agree. The serve is not only the serve, it's not only you starting the point, and in men's tennis particularly, you being able to set the tone for how the point is going to play out. It's also, from a purely math perspective, it's the first shot of the rally. Well, we know that shots 1 through 4 are like your diamonds. Those are like your premium, your primo. They're worth more, really, from a purely math point of view, because the vast majority of points are played within the first 4 strokes. So that means shot 1 carries a lot of value, even for a player whose serve is not his stock and trade or his bread and butter. It's crucially important.
Yes, and I for years, we've heard the term of the serve as a point starter. I don't believe that. I think that's an escape. I think that's evasive and irresponsible, because it doesn't. It's not just a point. It's not neutral. It's not meant to. Oh, it just gets the point started. I think it's really, like you said, it helps set the tempo of the point and can do that well. Of course, in some cases, it can end the point, but it can also set up the kind of return that allows you control, and that dictates the flow of the entire match, because then you can control these points, and then you're less liable on other points. And so the role, it's like the term a serve game, a return game, how those shots are used. I mean, that has implications at all levels. It's fast. That's where the thing about what the pros do and what civilians do have tremendous continuity.
Yeah. All right. I liked that we zoomed in on the serve. I think it's very important. Zooming out, his overall level, I think there are a lot of areas where things did look pretty good, and that the level a lead up event in Australia is fine. And the perspective that I have made sure to kind of remind people is, at the Melbourne 250 last year. Well, first of all, Nadal went 0-2 at the exhibitions that don't matter in Abu Dhabi. So, and he did not look good in those matches at all, right? But then he goes to the Melbourne 250, and I did not think his level was good. Like, my takeaway from that was, if he played a better player, he would have lost. But he played Ricardis Berankis, Emil Rusevori, Maxime Cressy. He had a withdrawal in there, and he won the title. So he won the title. Level was not good. Relative to what Nadal can do. So going into the Australian Open, we didn't, at least for me, I didn't have that sense that, okay, Rafa is ready and charged in for a big 2-week run. It's not the feeling I got at all. So what Nadal said after the match is look, I think my level's fine, which I personally agree with, and there's plenty of time until Australia. And I think, despite the record that says 0-2, because Norrie and de Minaur are both phenomenal and both played great matches, I don't think that's really reflective of a large-scale panic in his level.
I agree. I think we've sat here and we made all this big deal out of the serve, but he's still functioning quite well. These were close matches against Norrie. In my view, is just an incredible player right now. He's a lefty, which is a problem even for a lefty. And de Minaur was a late ad for Kyrgios, who dropped out, and he's playing in his home country, and it's kind of like, dude, we're just glad you're there. So he was playing with a lot of abandon, just free, very free. So these were, sort of quality losses. We're kind of nitpicking. So I agree with you, Gill. It's not catastrophic, and panic is the wrong thing to do right now. Although I do disagree with you. I thought the win over Cressy last year, heading into the Australian Open, was a quality win, because he had to do a lot of problem solving.
I think the pre-tournament results vary for different players. I remember once I saw Pete Sampras before Wimbledon, and he'd lost. I think he hadn't won the Queen's Club tournament. And he said to me, it's just about getting innings. That's an American baseball term. He just was getting match play experience and just getting that. And he's aware that he won Wimbledon 7 times. So he's just kind of got his eye on what the prize is. And I think, again, for Rafa, it's, am I Am I playing? Am I rounding into form? Am I hitting the ball well? There's some good things. Oh, by the way, I did win that 250. That's nice. But that's kind of like an incidental journey. Now, if you're ranked number 17, if you're Max Cressy heading into Australia, that's a big deal. I won a tournament and I beat anyone to win a tournament. So it's kind of this, and it's also, none of this I know if it's even true as much as I think of it as like it's tennis player logic. I'm just kind of, however the board looks for me, it's going to work for my view of how I need it to be. Oh, I've won tournaments before. It's okay. This is good. I'm hitting the ball well. I'm moving. I saw some good signs out there. Oh, I won. Outcomes good. Yeah. So they can work it any way they want.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Let's go to Novak. A lot less drama around the level that he's at, despite being just 1 year younger than Nadal. There is no sense of, where is Novak at with his game, and is there a decline? Because he had an awesome end to last year. He is now 2-0 with wins over Frenchman Constant Lestienne and Quentin Alice. And I don't think I pronounced Alice's first name correctly, but French names are my weakness.
Noted.
So I think maybe the biggest story is the reception in Adelaide that Djokovic has received. There are Serbian flags everywhere. The stadium, no surprise, but is completely packed. But it's not just packed like after the third game of the first set. It's packed like 10 minutes before he walks out. Like, there's a lot of excitement in Adelaide for Djokovic, Joel, and a lot of discussion last year, and I guess a little bit in the lead up to this year, of if that would be the case or not in Australia.
I think we talked about that. I thought in the tennis world around the tournaments and such, I think that would be the case, because the tennis fans in Australia are fair. They love hardworking players. Novak's a champion. He's won there 9 times. He's great. I'm still a little curious to see what happens when he surfaces in Melbourne, and what the whole broader city thing is like. Inside the tennis world, I think he's going to be revered. And again, the drama you talked about, Novak and the drama on the court, his drama rarely takes place on the court. I mean, the things for him, it's the stuff that's gone on outside the court, all the stuff that happened last year when he's Australia, and he'll be asked about that and talk about that. But it's just, I think it's really nice to see him back, and it's great to see that passion and excitement around watching him play.
Now, Gil, why would the reception that Novak is getting surprise you? Because, and I'm going to find this clip, because I think I remember my words were, it will be a story of redemption when he returns to Australia, and the crowd will chant his name. I believe I used those words. And sure enough, they're chanting Novak, Novak. Sure, Melbourne is a different city, but I expect even more adulation.
I said in the crowd, I agree with you. I don't think there won't be. I'm at the crowd. Yes, I'm curious about like the city itself a little bit. Even then,
I mean, if there will be like a protest, I doubt it. I doubt it.
I doubt that too. But that's what I was talking about. I think there'll be. As I agree with you, and you did say that. I remember that you said that. We'll find that.
I just have to find the clip, because it's like, so rarely am I so spot on that when I am spot on, I want to do like a victory lap. I'll find it. But yeah, I think it's great to see. It really is. I know we're going to get to this. Maybe, I don't know if you wanted to wait until after we talked about the matches, but there's some worry that he won't be able to get into the United States, because here in the US, we've just extended the COVID restrictions that we had, that you need to be vaccinated, non-citizen, if you're going to enter the United States. And the reason is that there's a huge spike in COVID in China right now, not here in the States necessarily. I mean, I know friends that have had COVID recently, but it's been pretty mild. Hospitalizations are down, so it's not really spiking. But for visitors coming in, that is a thing. That being said, I just want to add the little caveat here that if you follow the great journalist John Wertheim on social media, he tweeted yesterday that he's hearing, and when he hears, I listen, he's hearing that there is a potential pathway for Novak to be able to come into the United States and play Indian Wells and Miami via an exemption. So there you have it. You're up to date.
Which was pretty much, I mean, we did think that was the case last year, right? That there might be an exemption for Novak.
In the United States?
Yeah,
Not in the United
Not
States.
in the United States. I didn't think
We
there was.
thought in the US we thought the rules might change in
Yes.
time.
For all people. For all
That's fair.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it
Okay.
wasn't going to be. I had no sense. After all that happened in Australia last year, I had no thought that anyone in the tennis world was going to try to pursue an exemption from Novak. Yeah, I think the thinking was maybe for all people. For all.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. I'm with you. Not surprised, by the way, for the record, at the Adelaide reception at all. Maybe because Amy put it in my head, but no. I mean, you have to remember, because of what Novak went through, the passion that his supporters feel are going to be leveled up to a 10 in Australia. We have to show this guy, welcome this guy to our country. If I live 2 hours away from Adelaide, that's a hike. That's a long drive for a Novak Djokovic fan. And that Novak Djokovic fan may not have gotten in the car and wanted to drive 2 hours to Adelaide 3 years ago for this 250 event. But now it is even more important for that Novak Djokovic fan to bring their Serbian flag and drive to the Adelaide 250. So we are seeing the byproducts of that there is an increased passion, and understandably so, to support Novak after what happened last year. Right?
Absolutely. And well, support, I think, to celebrate.
Sure.
To celebrate, to enjoy Novak. I mean, to enjoy Novak. I mean, yeah, that's it.
And then, okay, on the Sunshine Double Indian Wells Miami thing, I think at this point, despite John Wertheim hearing that there might be a way around it, under the assumption that he's not going to be able to play, which is looking like the most likely outcome, what does this mean for like rankings and seeding? Like last year, it was kind of new and fresh, and it felt like, okay, 2022 is kind of going to be somewhat of a lost year. 2023, for it to happen again, I don't know. Does it feel a little bit different this year? I just feel, I guess the main thing I'm feeling is right now Novak is 5 in the world. He's not going to be a top 4 seed for the Australian Open. And he's in pole position. If he's able to play these events in the first half, he would be in pole position to get back to number 1 in the world. But with Australia, he'll probably be top 4 most likely. But without the Sunshine Double and stuff, he's still at a disadvantage in the rankings.
I think what's going to happen, based on what's happened these last 2 years of the pandemic and people missing tournaments and travel bans and choices and all these things, we're going to have a lot more conversations like the one we had at the end of the year about who's the best player. You know, is it the guy who's number 1 on the rankings? Is the guy who won these titles? Is this guy who's showing the form? And I think that's going to continue. As far as the Novak view, I don't think Novak gives. I think Novak, it kind of disturbs him. Look, I'm the best player of the last 15 years. I'll beat whoever. It doesn't matter. I don't think that matters from the Novak view. I don't think he cares truly. Okay, good. So I'm seeded 6 going into Roland Garros. Whatever. I'll go. I've won the tournament twice. I've won a zillion other titles. Whatever. Throw him down in front of me. Tell you what, don't seed me. I don't care. I really think
that's the one. Roland Garros would be the one where I would think a better seeding would be a significant advantage for him. Otherwise, it's almost a gift that a blessing in disguise that he would be able to take that time off, because as we've talked about many, many times, it's for a player of advanced age, it's better to take chunks off of the season and rest. And look at last year, he had to take blocks of time off. And when he did play, he was lights out and phenomenal. So it could be a blessing in disguise. But the other part of me would love to see him play these marquee tournaments in the United States. I mean, the guy owns a place in Miami. The last I heard, he probably hasn't been able to even go to his own home that he has there for the past 3 years. So it would be lovely to have him back in the States. But
Right. From a fan standpoint, it's upsetting. It's sad because people in various cities want to see him play in person. I certainly do. And from his standpoint, it's like, all right, this is the card, dealt these cards. And again, I get this talk about seeding and even the French Open where, oh, you don't have to play this guy. You're Novak Djokovic. You've won a zillion titles. You've been number one more than anyone ever. Good. Throw whoever you want at me.
I think that's a big key, actually, the thing you just snuck in there, because overall, I agree with you, Joel, that seeding is not the most important thing for him. I do think in a parallel universe where he was still chasing the number one stuff, this would really be quite bothersome to him that he can't be number one. But we've all agreed that time, now that he has the records, has kind of passed, and it's not all that important anymore.
No, not.
So I guess the other question with that would be,
I mean, with the exception that you don't want to play Rafa too early at Roland Garros. I mean, that I think we can all agree is a disadvantage.
Okay, I'm gonna go 49% on that. You got to beat Rafa. I mean, I know. Yeah, I'm looking at the view through Novak's lens, not through the tournament's lens, not through the public's lens, not through that lens, but through the Novak lens. He's not gonna. I got to beat Rafa somewhere. I've beaten him twice. I've beaten him in the quarters. It's just part of the whole journey through competition. Now, from all the other segments, yeah, I don't want to see. I mean, the whole purpose of seeding in the first place was to eliminate, the two top players in the tournament meeting early. That was why seeding was created in the first place 100 years ago. The top two, it was meant so you didn't draw out of a hat, and it's like, wow, first round, Novak and Rafa. The top two. That's why seeding was created, to kind of create those places, those placeholders for those other players.
Yeah. Well, impressively, so far, there's been no ill effect on his tennis for the stop, start kind of nature of it, which maybe eventually that could have an effect, but so far the level's been really good. Maybe it's not ideal, like going to a tournament like Monte Carlo if you don't play the Sunshine Double. At the same time, a lot of players who do well in Miami, they stink in Monte Carlo. Like, nobody can ever make that transition.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
So who knows?
The Atlantic Ocean. So we're gonna call. Well, that was the notion. Didn't you have Can we talk about this sometime, about start the clay court season in Miami or whatever? Didn't we talked about?
I find that this Indian Wells Miami situation is not good. I think I came to the conclusion that we really need to split them up, because Indian Wells is, from a weather point of view and a darkness point of view and all that, it's at the perfect time. Miami, you could really play anytime. So my thing was play Miami before Australia, whatever, but people are really married to this Sunshine Double thing. I mean, folks, these tournaments are on opposite ends of the United States. You're changing time zones. It's very tough on the body. And then to go play Monte Carlo, I mean, what a drag.
Well,
it's not quite Queen's Club to the All England Club.
Yeah.
No. Oh, that's going across town. I wrote this years ago about the notion, I think, and I think you've talked about it too, Amy. Start the year in Miami, go to Australia, then go Indian Wells, or even have Australia after it. But the thing about this is the wedding and investment that's had in these is a result of the localization of tennis. It's not that Miami cares about Indian Wells. It's just that it's kind of like emerged that way. It's kind of like the challenge of tennis organizing itself. I mean, this calendar reform thing we could talk about forever, but it has to do with the localization of these franchises. This isn't a league. This is just a series of nation states.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're way off track. Let's look at Djokovic next couple matches. Shapovalov and a potential Medvedev semifinal. I'm really interested in both of those potentials because I really like. I think Dennis has become more controlled and more patient. Now that could change. Maybe it's just something I saw at the very end of last year, but I think I'm seeing that. So I feel like he's dangerous. Second, yeah. So I'm excited to see that one. And then the Medvedev rivalry has always been so intriguing. Joel, any thoughts on the Novak Shapo matchup?
Yeah, I think Dennis, the player came to mind, just hang with me on this, is a little bit like James Blake when he was playing well. Like Dennis is dangerous, lively, shot maker. He's going to score some points. He's going to do some things. So then it's kind of an interesting thing to see how Novak, acting almost like a safe cracker, how he turns the combo and finds the answer. I think I'm more excited from a viewing standpoint to watch that match than I would be Novak and Medvedev. Novak and Medvedev, it's like, yeah, I've seen it. I like it. That's a higher overall quality because Medvedev has had a much better career than Dennis. But I think that the Shapovalov thing is kind of an intriguing little problem statement, and I think that's one of the things where you can watch Novak shine if he wins that match. You see how Novak goes about being his great Novak, like he would against Medvedev too. But it's just they're good matchups, and these are the type of things. This, by the way, is a great, like, Novak. You could see putting in the stepping stones towards finding his game, and he's so methodical, so in control. You know, whenever you see him walk on a court, okay, he knows what he's up to here. He's organized.
They're both appointment viewing, although I don't know if I'll be waking up, at 1 a.m. or whatever. I will, go back and watch on Tennis Channel Plus. The Shapo match is interesting because I've always viewed Shapovalov as a guy who pulls the trigger for the flare shot too quickly in certain situations without playing percentage tennis. And for a player like Djokovic, who always seems to know the right time to play percentage tennis and the right time to go for break conditions and go for that shot. For me, for somebody like Djokovic, it's pretty easy match. You just wait for Shapo to kind of get in his own head and try to push too much or do too much. Although being a lefty is never fun opponent to face. The Medvedev match, I'm fascinated to watch him this year because he said last year was bad. I'm throwing it out. It wasn't me. It was a one-off. And this year he says he's come back with much more mental discipline, and things have quieted in his personal life. And he had a baby, and probably he's gotten used to life like that now. And so far he's looked really good. So we know that series is just fraught with drama, and I'd love to see that matchup. So I certainly hope Novak comes through the Shapo match.
I didn't see those quotes from Medvedev. I'm glad to hear that from him. The fact that he finished 7th in the world and his response is like, that was crap, I'm better.
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing from a Medvedev perspective to hear. So heating up for Djokovic in Adelaide, and of course we will at the very least talk to you next when the Australian Open draw is out, potentially before then. That'll do it for this episode of 3. Remember, we're available on all podcast platforms. We appreciate it if you leave a rating and a review on Apple and Spotify. And if you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. We will see you next time on the next episode of 3.